The interview had barely begun when Naga leaned forward, lowered her voice, and asked a question so sharp that Meghan's entire expression changed instantly. The studio fell silent. Producers froze. And in that moment, everyone knew this interview was about to explode in a way BBC had never seen before. Meghan arrived at the BBC studio expecting a respectful, professionally controlled interview, the kind she had been promised in every email and pre-production call. She walked through the hallway with calm confidence, her team beside her, believing this would be just another chance to present her narrative on friendly ground. But the moment she stepped inside the brightly lit studio, she sensed the atmosphere was different. The air felt thick, charged with an energy she couldn't quite name. Producers avoided eye contact. Assistants moved quickly, almost nervously. And seated at the center desk, Naga Munchetty watched Meghan with a sharp, analytical gaze that didn't match the warm, neutral tone usually associated with morning journalism. Meghan sat down, adjusting her microphone, offering a polite smile as she settled into her seat. But Naga didn't smile back. Instead, she leaned forward, fingers interlocked, as if she were preparing for something far more intense than a routine interview. As the countdown to live broadcast began, Meghan felt a strange tightening in her chest. Something felt wrong, but she brushed it aside, assuming it was the usual pre-camera nerves. The moment the red light flashed and they went live, Naga did not offer introductions or pleasantries. She didn't ask about Meghan's projects, charity work, or upcoming events. Instead, she opened with a question so direct, so tightly aimed at Meghan's most guarded controversies that Meghan physically froze in her chair. Her smile wavered instantly. She blinked, unsure whether she had heard correctly. It was a topic she had explicitly asked the producers to avoid, a subject she had repeatedly said she would not discuss on air. Yet Naga had chosen it as her first strike. The studio fell into a strange silence, the kind that only happens when everyone realizes a boundary has been crossed. Meghan attempted to answer calmly, choosing her words with meticulous care, trying to steer the conversation back to neutral ground. But before she could finish, Naga cut in again, this time even sharper, more probing, more relentless. It wasn't an interview anymore. It was a pressure point, a calculated push into the exact corner Meghan feared. Meghan's posture straightened, her hands tightening on her lap. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged alarmed looks, whispering urgently among themselves, unsure if they should intervene or let the moment play out. Meghan felt the tension rising with each second, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as she realized this was not the safe space she had been promised. She tried to maintain composure, to breathe, to answer diplomatically. But Naga was prepared for every attempt at redirection. She challenged Meghan's statements, questioned her motives, and pushed deeper into the subject Meghan least wanted to revisit. The air around them grew heavier, hotter, as if the studio lights were burning with 10 times their usual intensity. Meghan's irritation turned into shock, then into a controlled but visible anger. She shifted in her seat, her expression tightening, her tone becoming clipped and defensive. The tension between the two women felt almost physical, a silent battle of willpower visible in every exchanged glance. Staff members behind the scenes realized the interview was spiraling out of control. Yet none knew how to stop it without making the situation worse. Meghan could sense the trap closing around her, the ambush tightening its grip. What was supposed to be a calm, polished appearance had detonated into a confrontation she never saw coming. And as she stared back at Naga, who showed no signs of softening, Meghan understood one thing clearly. This interview was heading toward an explosion. Naga waited with calculated patience, letting Meghan finish her polished answer about philanthropy before shifting the entire atmosphere of the studio with one deceptively calm breath. The tension was subtle at first, a slight narrowing of Naga's eyes, a tightening of her posture, tiny cues that the conversation was about to veer sharply off the path Meghan expected. Then, without softening her tone or offering any warning, Naga delivered the question that would rupture the interview. A direct, Unfiltered probe into the exact royal controversy Meghan had spent years trying to escape. Meghan's expression collapsed instantly. Her lips parted, her eyes widened, and for a full second she forgot to breathe. This was the topic her team had fought so hard to block, the one wound she refused to reopen, and yet here it was, weaponized against her in front of a nationwide audience. Meghan tried to keep her composure, but the shock was too raw, too immediate. She forced a small smile that trembled visibly under the studio lights. A desperate attempt to hide the panic rising inside her chest. "I'm not discussing that," she said softly, hoping Naga would respect the boundary. But Naga didn't. Instead, she leaned in even closer, sharpening her words with cold precision. She reframed the question, adding new details, some half-true, some speculative, all painful, dragging Meghan deeper into a past she had fought tirelessly to leave behind. Meghan's jaw tensed. Her fingers dug into her palms. Her heart hammered so loudly that she could almost hear it echoing in her ears. She repeated her refusal, this time firmer. But Naga pushed harder, dropping the polite facade entirely. The crew behind the cameras exchanged frantic glances. Realizing Naga had crossed the line between journalism and provocation, Meghan felt her throat tighten as memories she had buried resurfaced with ruthless clarity. Headlines twisting her words, accusations that tore her life apart, moments of isolation so deep she could hardly breathe. And now, here she was again, cornered, publicly ambushed by a question she never agreed to confront. She straightened in her seat, her expression sharpening into something both defensive and wounded. She tried to redirect, but Naga interrupted again, her voice unwavering, her intention unmistakably confrontational. Every new variation of the question hit Meghan like another blow, each one slicing into the fragile image of control she was trying to protect. The studio air felt suffocating, heavy with unspoken tension. Meghan's team stood frozen off camera, helpless, unable to stop the spiraling disaster unfolding in front of them. Meghan blinked hard, fighting the sting of anger burning behind her eyes. She felt her breath shorten, her patience fracture, her resolve tremble beneath the weight of the ambush. She finally said more sharply, "I will not respond to that." But even that wasn't enough to halt Naga's pursuit. Naga pressed again, suggesting Meghan's refusal meant she had something to hide. That statement snapped something inside Meghan. Her shoulders locked. Her gaze hardened. She stared directly at Naga, shocked not just by the question itself, but by the cold determination behind it. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't journalism. This was an attack. This was a trap carefully set, and she had walked straight into it. Meghan felt heat rush to her face, her pulse accelerating with an intensity she could no longer mask. Every camera captured her unraveling composure, the tightening of her mouth, the flicker of disbelief in her eyes, the subtle tremor of fury in her voice. She had endured years of accusations, years of controversy, years of scrutiny, but this felt different. This felt personal. She repeated her refusal one last time, her tone cutting, her patience gone. But the damage was already done. Naga had crossed the line, and the interview would never recover. In that moment, surrounded by bright lights, rolling cameras, and a nation watching, Meghan understood the harsh truth. This wasn't an interview gone wrong. This was a confrontation designed to break her. Meghan tried to hold herself together. But the moment Naga's forbidden question hit the air, something inside her cracked, and every camera in the BBC studio caught it in real time. Her composure, normally flawless, trained, almost regal, began to falter in small, telling ways she couldn't control. First came the widening of her eyes, a flash of naked disbelief that she failed to mask. Then the corners of her mouth tightened, her jaw stiffened, and the muscle along her cheek twitched as she tried to force a neutral expression back onto her face. But the damage was done. The red recording lights felt hotter, brighter, most burning into her skin as they captured every flickering emotion she wished she could hide. Meghan shifted in her seat, shoulders tensing, her fingers curling slightly as she fought the instinct to defend herself more aggressively. She tried to breathe slowly through her nose. But even that couldn't stop the rising wave of frustration surging through her chest. The tension in the studio thickened to something almost physical, a weight pressing down on her as she struggled to steady her voice. Her rehearsed calm tone cracked at the edges, revealing the storm underneath. She tried answering indirectly, choosing carefully crafted words, but her voice trembled, betraying her fury. Each time she looked at Naga, her expression hardened a little more, not just shocked now, but a simmering anger she could no longer hide. Her eyebrows drew inward, her lips pressed together, and her nostrils flared as she inhaled sharply, trying not to let the emotion take over. But the cameras didn't miss a thing. They captured her blinking rapidly, her throat tightening, her breaths becoming shallow as she fought to maintain her public image while her private frustration threatened to erupt. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged nervous glances, watching Meghan's unraveling composure with growing concern. Meghan felt their worried stares, felt the entire room silently anticipating what she would do next. And that pressure only made her pulse race faster. She tried to redirect the conversation, but Naga cut her off again, pushing the interview deeper into dangerous emotional territory. That interruption was the breaking point. Meghan's face changed instantly. Shock melted into outrage. Her eyes sharpened, her posture straightened, and her polite, controlled tone vanished. She spoke slower, colder, each word sounding carefully held back, as if she was restraining something explosive beneath the surface. Even her body language betrayed her turmoil. Her shoulders lifted defensively, her hands clenched tighter, her foot tapped softly on the studio floor with restless agitation. The interview wasn't just slipping away anymore, it was collapsing. Meghan felt herself losing control of the narrative, the tone, the room, and worst of all, her own emotions. Every second under those bright lights felt like an attack she hadn't prepared for. She blinked again, longer this time, as if trying to physically block out the humiliation building inside her. She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her heartbeat loud in her ears. As Naga continued, Meghan's frustration evolved into something sharper, anger mixed with disbelief. A fury she had kept buried for years, resurfacing under the relentless pressure. And the cameras caught it all. The subtle quiver in her bottom lip, the tightening of her shoulders, the fire igniting behind her eyes. She looked directly into the lens at one point, as if silently speaking to the audience, silently asking, "Do you see what she's doing?" But the interview didn't stop spiraling. Meghan's attempts to regain control were useless against the emotional ambush unfolding around her. The cameras kept rolling, catching every second of her shock, her frustration, her growing anger, capturing the exact moment Meghan Markle realized she was no longer participating in an interview but enduring an interrogation, one that threatened to push her past her limit. The breaking point came faster than anyone in the studio expected. Meghan sat rigidly in her chair, her face tight with controlled anger, trying desperately to maintain the last fragments of her composure after enduring a relentless barrage of invasive questions. But Naga wasn't finished. She waited for Meghan to end her strained, clipped answer, then leaned in with a chilling calm that made the entire room shift. In a tone almost too soft for the tension she was about to unleash, Naga asked the final question, or question so deeply personal, so sharply tied to the most painful part of Meghan's past, that everyone in the studio felt the temperature drop. Meghan's expression collapsed in a split second. Her eyes widened, her lips parted in disbelief, and her entire posture stiffened as if she had been struck. It was the one question she had warned them never to bring up. The one topic her team had said would end the interview immediately, and Naga had gone straight for it without hesitation. For a moment the room froze, suspended in absolute silence. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate as they captured the shock rippling across Meghan's face. Her anger, which she had been struggling so hard to contain, finally broke through the surface. She didn't answer. She didn't attempt to respond. She didn't even force the polite smile she typically hid behind. Instead, she stared at Naga with an intensity that stunned even the crew members who were used to celebrities losing their patience. Meghan's breathing grew sharp and quick as her eyes flicked toward the producers behind the camera's producers, who suddenly looked terrified, as if realizing too late how disastrously wrong the interview had gone. Meghan slowly reached up and touched the base of her microphone. Her fingers trembled slightly, not with fear, but with fury she could no longer hide. Naga opened her mouth to press again, but Meghan cut her off with a single ice-cold sentence. "This interview is over." Her voice was low, controlled, but shaking with outrage. Before anyone could react, Meghan grabbed the microphone cable and pulled. The sharp crack of static filled the studio as she ripped the mic from her clothing, the small device dropping onto the table with a thud that echoed through the silent room. The crew froze. Naga blinked, stunned, momentarily speechless for the first time in the entire interview. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the studio floor. Her expression was unreadable now. Not just hurt, not just angry, but deeply betrayed. She didn't look at Naga again. She didn't look at the cameras. Instead, she lifted her chin and turned toward the exit with a furious determination that made even the security team step back instinctively. As she strode across the set, the heavy silence finally shattered into frantic whispers. Producers rushed forward, calling her name, trying to explain, trying to calm her. But Meghan didn't break her stride. She brushed past them without a single word, her steps sharp and fast, her breathing tight with indignation. She pushed open the studio door with more force than necessary, disappearing behind it as the stunned crew watched helplessly. The door swung shut behind her with a final, echoing slam that left the entire studio in stunned stillness. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Naga remained seated, her eyes wide, her expression shaken in a way she hadn't shown before. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the aftermath: an empty chair, a dropped microphone, and a room full of people trying to process what had just unfolded before them. Meghan Markle had walked out live on the BBC, and nothing about this interview would ever be forgotten. The moment Meghan Markle stormed out of the BBC studio, the media world erupted in chaos. Headlines flashed across screens worldwide within minutes. Meghan walks out live on BBC. Royal clash on air. Naga Munchetty pushes too far. Social media exploded with millions of reactions, ranging from shock to outrage, speculation to support, as viewers dissected every second of the televised meltdown. Clips of Meghan's walkout circulated almost instantly, replayed endlessly on news channels, YouTube compilations, and social feeds, each one fueling endless debate. BBC insiders, speaking anonymously, began leaking details about what happened off-camera conversations, warnings, and heated exchanges that the public would never see. These behind-the-scenes revelations only amplified the frenzy, painting the interview as a high-stakes standoff rather than a standard broadcast. Analysts and commentators speculated endlessly. Had Meghan overreacted, or had Naga deliberately provoked her? Was it a miscalculation of journalistic curiosity, or a deliberate ambush aimed at igniting controversy? Royal experts weighed in, dissecting Meghan's body language, tone of voice, and micro-expressions, attempting to decode the mixture of shock, frustration, and anger visible to the millions who had witnessed the unfolding drama. Simultaneously, public opinion split sharply. Some praised Meghan for standing her ground and refusing to answer invasive questions, applauding her for asserting boundaries in a hostile environment, while others criticized her for losing composure on live television, arguing that a more controlled response would have been wiser. The debate seeped into political and cultural commentary, with podcasts, blogs, and news shows dedicating entire segments to dissecting the consequences of the confrontation. Meanwhile, Naga's professionalism and decision-making became a hot topic, with some viewers defending her right to ask hard questions, while others condemned her approach as unnecessarily aggressive. Within days, the story dominated trending lists and online search results, forcing every major outlet to weigh in, often recycling clips, images, and insider reports to keep the discussion alive. The ripple effects extended beyond the interview itself. Media companies examined their editorial processes, debating whether interviewers had a responsibility to respect boundaries, and public relations teams across the globe studied the incident as a case study in crisis communication and celebrity diplomacy. At the same time, Meghan's team issued a measured statement, reaffirming her commitment to her work, emphasizing her rights to privacy, and carefully walking the fine line between addressing the public and defending her dignity. Yet, despite official statements, speculation remained relentless, leaving the story alive and evolving on social media, news cycles, and online forums. The walkout had become more than just a moment on television. It was a cultural flashpoint, a case study in fame, power, and media scrutiny, demonstrating how a single question could ignite a global conversation and polarize public opinion. And now, as viewers everywhere continue to analyze every angle, every gesture, every unspoken word, the story isn't over. It's a narrative still unfolding, demanding attention, debate, and reflection. So if you want to see the full sequence of events, understand what truly happened behind the cameras, and hear the reactions that shocked the world, watch the full video now. Witness the moment that left everyone in the studio stunned and the world talking.